Hi there. In this episode, Synth Lore, the Roland XV-88. I'm going to discuss my feelings about the Roland XV-88, compare it sonically and spec-wise to a Korg Kronos, and take a look inside the unit. I'm also going to do a quick listening quiz at the end to compare the sounds of the XV-88 against the Korg Kronos. You can decide which sounds better and see if you can guess which one is which. In this particular case, this is absolutely not a fair comparison. I don't have another synth of the XV-88's era to compare it to. I used to own a Yamaha Motif ES rack, and that would have been a great comparison. Unfortunately, I sold it 5 years ago, so the Kronos will have to do. The Kronos is technologically 11 years newer than the XV-88, but I still think you'll find the quiz challenging. Most of the discussion regarding the XV-88 will apply to the Roland XV-3080, since that is the rack mount equivalent. As I often do, a little history. I own 2 Roland XV-88s. I love the light-weighted hammer action feel of the keyboard. I purchased my first one brand new circa 2000 to replace an Alesis QS8. I'll throw the specs of these 2 instruments up on the screen. I have a Synth Lore episode on the QS series of synthesizers where I compare them to the XV-88. You may find it interesting. The XV-88 was a significant upgrade from the QS8 back in 2000. It looked, felt, and sounded more substantial. But if you've watched the Synth Lore episode where I put the Alesis QS series up against the XV-88, you know the QS series sounds pretty good, and it gave the XV-88 a run for its money. A friend used to refer to this as a music device being technically obsolete, but not musically obsolete. There are certainly some great sounds in the QS series. I purchased one expansion card for the XV-88. It's the SRX-03 Studio card. It was a good purchase at the time. I would consider it expensive by today's standards. The XV-88 was my master controller for a little over a decade. Then I purchased a Korg Kronos X. I've only used the XV-88 in a studio environment. I stopped playing live decades ago, but the XV-88 would make an excellent live keyboard. Just before I purchased the Kronos, the right audio output on the XV-88 stopped working. Now I mostly use the XV-88 as a controller for piano and a mono sound source. I have the second XV-88 if I need a stereo sound source, as it's fully functional. I have a lengthy episode on XV-88 restoration, which includes replacing keys, replacing hammer cushions, lid felt, fabricating a structural bracket, repairing and hardening the hammers, and more. About a year and a half ago, I purchased the second Roland XV-88, and all those maintenance and repair tasks I just mentioned had to be done on the second XV-88, and some had to be done on the first one as well. I love the action so much for piano, I just wanted to make sure that I'm never without it. The sound set is a step up from the QS8. The XV-88 has 4 times the sample ROM, twice the voices, an arpeggiator, a better display, more controls, more expansion, and some other important attributes. The only thing the XV-88 doesn't have compared to the QS8 is the ability to import samples. A feature like that is cool, and even though I never used it, I'm sure some folks did. Comparing the XV-88 to the Kronos is a different matter. I'll throw some specs up on the screen. The Kronos comes out ahead in every category except one. Like I said earlier, it's not a fair comparison. The Kronos is essentially a PC computer with all those modern conveniences. You might be wondering what that one category is that the Kronos didn't win. I really just talked about it and its keyboard feel. I'm not saying the XV-88 is better than the Kronos, it's just different. I'll call it a tie. The XV-88 has a lighter action than the Kronos. It's still a true hammer action, but it's easier to play, fast synth licks on the XV-88. And it's easier to do that on the 88 than it is on the Kronos. On the other hand, the Kronos is a better workout to keep your fingers in top playing condition. The XV-88 is well made. Unlike a lot of keyboards, not only is the main visible body of the keyboard metal, so are the ends, which are made from aluminum. It's a nice visual and construction touch. The underside of the keyboard is particle board. That's a little disappointing, but probably a cost-cutting choice or a rigidity choice. Many keyboards of the 80s used particle board for the underside, but by the 90s, a lot of manufacturers were switching to metal. On the front panel, there are 64 buttons, a volume slider, 4 more programmable sliders, a rotary encoder, a D-beam controller, and a combo pitch bend / modulation joystick. 38 of the buttons light up when activated, which can be useful. The display could be bigger, but at 2 lines of 40 characters, it's usable and certainly a step up from 2 lines of 16 characters. It makes editing a lot easier than the QS series. Speaking of editing, there's a free Roland XV editor for both Mac and PC. If you play live, you'll appreciate the dedicated transpose buttons on the front panel. It's easy to transpose up or down by octaves or half steps. You can turn the transpose function on and off, and it remembers your last transpose setting. It has a handy patch finder function and a phrase preview button. You can save 64 patches to a favorites memory. This would be handy for, say, setting up patches for a gig in the order that you use them, so you don't have to overwrite or move patches around in the main memory. Unfortunately, it's not like the set lists in the Kronos. It only allows patches to be saved to the favorites and not performances. That's a shame. You get 128 user patches, 64 user performances, and a piddly 4 user rhythm sets. There are 12 preset rhythm sets, and there are 768 patches that are presets, 256 general MIDI patches, and 64 preset performances. It uses a smart media card for additional storage. I have a 128 megabyte card in each of my XV-88 keyboards, but the XV-88 can only address 16 megabytes of the card. I was able to save 99 files to the card. When I tried to save a 100th file, I got a too many files warning. Each one of those files is 128 patches, 64 performances, and 4 rhythm sets, essentially all the user information. That's a total of 12,672 patches, 6,336 performances, and 396 rhythm sets saved to a card. You're unlikely to run out of storage space for your patch creations. I never used the card when I was using the XV-88 a lot back in the day. If you have an old smart card reader that will connect to a computer, a PC will read the card and display the files. It's formatted in FAT, F-A-T. This could be handy. I didn't see any way in the XV-88 to delete files on the card except one at a time or by formatting the card, which would erase all the files. Deleting groups of files using a PC would be trivial and faster if you had a bunch of files to delete. I tried it on my PC using an old card reader, and it works. You can find used 16 megabyte smart media cards on eBay for around $10. Do be careful and look carefully. There are some people that are selling them for way too much money, like $45, $50, but there are people out there selling them for $10, which is a fair price. You get 45 arpeggiator styles. There are enough parameters to get creative. Besides being a rompler, it's kind of a synthesizer, but not in the same sense as an analog synth, because you are using digital waveforms. But you can have some fun. You have filter options like 3 low-pass filters, a high-pass filter, a band-pass filter, and a peaking filter. There are parameters that you would recognize like cutoff frequency, resonance, and key follow. Also, envelopes for the filter and amplifier, and there are modulation routings. Some parameters don't have as much granularity as you might want. They move in steps of 10 rather than steps of 1, but like I said, it's not perfect. If you don't expect too much, like you're going to get a cheap Jupiter 8, you won't be disappointed. Do be careful not to blow your speakers making filter sweeps. The back panel gives you a decent complement of connectivity, including standard MIDI in, out, and through on 5-pin DIN connectors, 4 1/4-inch audio outputs, a headphone jack, 3 pedal inputs, an old PC Mac interface that I don't think very many people use anymore, and the aforementioned smart media card slot. Inside the unit, you can install 2 SRX expansion cards and 2 JV expansion cards. For the most part, the XV-3080 is the same. It has the same sound engine, preset memory, and user memory. It's a 2-rack space unit with 41 buttons, a rotary encoder, and a volume potentiometer. The power button, headphone jack, and smart card media slot are moved to the front panel. You get 6 card expansion slots on the XV-3080 instead of the 4 you get on the XV-88. That's 2 SRX card slots and 4 JV card slots. From my research, I found that Roland made 20 unique JV cards and 16 unique SRX cards. They can be spendy, especially for how much ROM they contain. JV cards have 8 megabytes of compressed data, and it's supposedly the equivalent of 16 megabytes. SRX cards have 64 megabytes of data. JV cards sell on eBay and Reverb in the range of $75 to about $300. SRX cards sell on eBay and Reverb in the range of about $100 to $350. Spending a similar amount of money for a contact library, you would be getting gigabytes of sounds, not megabytes. Remember, a gigabyte is 1,000 times a megabyte. The cards aren't worth the money. That's just my opinion. The back panel is simplified on the XV-3080. You get 6 audio outputs on 1/4-inch connectors, MIDI in, out, and through on 5-pin DINs, and an IEC power connector. Okay, time for the quiz. I'm going to play you 20 short audio segments, 10 for each synthesizer in a random sequence. Generally, I'd say that there are no tricks, and there are no tricks. It's either the XV-88 or the Kronos. If you hear one sound in this bunch that sounds like it came from another device, I guarantee you it is not from that device, it is from one of these synthesizers. There's no external processing other than normalizing. Good luck. So how did you do? I tried to find some sounds that were very similar and play them back to back, at least towards the beginning of the quiz, so you could really hear the difference. And then I jumble them up more towards the end of the quiz. In a couple of cases, I think it's hard to hear the difference, or at least distinguish between the two machines. For the most part, I stayed away from Kronos sounds that use a lot of karma with drum sounds, because it's easy to identify, and it's not fair to the XV-88. I did use a couple of Kronos sounds with karma, but without drums, because the XV-88 does have some pulsating sounds. I didn't feature any drums, and I had my reasons for that. First, with only 10 sounds from each instrument, I thought it better to compare the main body of sounds. Second, if you're composing score, it's unlikely you'll use the XV-88 as a drum source. You'll probably use Damage or other such products. If you're composing pop and country, gospel, jazz, you'll probably use Addictive Drums, Battery, or some other software plugin. Still, I'm starting to feel guilty, so I'll do a postscript on this video. A postscript is where I usually add some additional information after my closing at the end of the video. Some of you may know that I do this from time to time. Hopefully you haven't missed any of them. I like most of the sounds on the XV-88. Not necessarily the acoustic pianos, even though a couple of them aren't bad, but just about everything else, especially the synth sounds. The pianos can sound good when layered in a performance. The big thing is that it's not the year 2000 anymore, and a lot of the sounds the XV-88 offers are just better on large multi-sampled libraries in a product like Contact. I still believe the XV-88 is a relevant machine because of some of the non-acoustic sounds, the feel of the keyboard, and the synth options. If these features are important to you, and you can get a great price on an XV-88, it might be a good purchase for you. In 2024, an XV-88 sells used for about $800, and they have been going up in price over the past 5 years. An XV-3080 will cost you about $400. If you were interested in an XV-3080, I would tell you to spend the extra money and get an XV-5080. It has better sonic features, a better screen, just better specs all around. You'll remember at the beginning of this episode, I mentioned I have an episode that covers maintenance on the XV-88. It's also good for other units that use the same key bed like the RD500 and the RD600 and others. Just know that hammers fail and they cost $12 to $15 each to replace if you're going to do it yourself, and then they're shipping too. I offer some preventative tips in that episode, but you have to do it before the hammers fail. It also doesn't work well for hammers that are past a certain point in their health lifespan. When buying a used XV-88, I would say that the odds suggest that some, many, or even all of the hammers would have some wear on them. It's highly likely that you'll need to perform some maintenance while you own this keyboard. If you see an XV-88 in an ad and one or more of the keys are lower by 1/4 of an inch, it means the hammers have probably broken off and they will have to be replaced. It's also a good indicator that every single hammer is going to have cracks and they are going to get worse until the hammer completely fails. I'm not trying to scare you. I owned my brand new XV-88 for 20 years before I had to replace a hammer. But all XV-88s are now 20 plus years old. I don't want you to buy one, have issues, and start blaming Jeffy. In closing, I don't use my XV-88s for the sounds very often. I use them for the keyboard feel. But there are certainly some interesting sounds and some possibilities with the limited synth engine. Lastly, what's great about some of these older keyboards is that the sound set is fresh again because no one has heard it on a cut in 20 plus years. Hopefully I haven't wasted your time. Take care, and I'll be back in another episode soon.